Princess Liara of Zithara stood on the balcony of her crystal palace, staring at the horizon where the twin suns of her planet painted the sky in shades of gold and violet. The floating gardens below shimmered like oceans of emerald and sapphire. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the fluttering in her chest, but it was no use. The thought of her upcoming marriage filled her with dread. It was not the ceremony nor the attention of her people that frightened her. It was the human. Ethan, the ambassador from Earth, was expected to arrive that evening. The council had arranged the marriage as part of a political alliance. Humans were known to Zitharans as unpredictable, loud, and dirty. Liara had grown up hearing stories about their rough habits and messy ways. The idea of spending her life with one filled her with a mixture of fear and disgust, and yet she had to meet him. Liara turned as her personal attendant, a small winged creature named Viri, approached. "Princess, your guests have arrived," Viri said, her voice soft but tinged with excitement. "The human ambassador wishes to meet you." Liara nodded, smoothing the folds of her flowing silver gown. Her long, dark hair reflected the twin suns' light, and her violet eyes, sharp and intelligent, betrayed her nervousness. She descended the palace steps, each movement careful, graceful, and full of dignity. The main hall of the palace was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The walls were made of transparent crystal that seemed to glow from within, and the floor was a polished metal that reflected the swirling lights above. Floating platforms carried flowers and fruits in midair, drifting gently as if held by invisible hands. Ethan felt out of place immediately. On Earth, he was used to skyscrapers and crowded streets, not cities that seemed to defy gravity and shimmer like jewels. His plain brown suit felt heavy in the alien heat, and he noticed the faint floral scent in the air made him slightly dizzy. When Liara entered, the hall seemed to hold its breath. Ethan bowed, awkward but respectful, unsure of the proper customs. Liara's eyes, sharp and calculating, studied him. He was different. Not in a bad way, she realized. His hair was dark and a little messy, his skin pale compared to Zitharan standards, and his hands looked rough from work. But there was something in his eyes, something gentle and careful that she had not expected. Liara curtsied slightly, keeping her distance. "Ambassador Ethan," she said, her voice formal but steady. "Welcome to Zithara." "Thank you, Princess Liara," Ethan replied, bowing. "It is an honor to meet you and your world. I hope I may live up to your expectations." His voice was calm and polite. Unlike the stories she had heard, he did not swagger or boast. Viri, sensing the tension, stepped aside. The palace doors closed behind them, leaving only the two of them in the shimmering hall. Liara's heart beat fast. She wanted to step back, to retreat into the safety of her chambers, but duty held her in place. "You may stay for the evening feast," Liara said carefully. "You will meet the council and our people. It is customary." Ethan nodded, his gaze steady. "I look forward to learning your customs, Princess. I wish only to show respect." Liara hesitated. She had expected a human to be loud, careless, or rude. Instead, she found herself studying his quiet composure, the careful way he held himself, and the sincere respect in his eyes. It made her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with curiosity. The feast was held in the palace's main chamber. A long table floated in mid-air, carrying dishes that shimmered with colors and scents unfamiliar to Earth. Liara walked beside Ethan, explaining each dish in soft, precise words. He listened carefully, tasting politely, nodding with appreciation. She noticed that he did not touch anything without asking first, unlike the humans she had read about. During the meal, Zitharan nobles whispered among themselves, casting curious glances at Ethan. Some were skeptical of the arrangement. Others watched for signs that he would embarrass Liara. But Ethan remained calm, smiling gently when he spoke, his eyes never leaving hers for long. At one point, a small bowl slipped from the edge of the floating table. Liara instinctively reached out to catch it, and Ethan moved faster, steadying the bowl with his hands. His touch was careful and firm, yet gentle. Liara froze, feeling a warmth she had never felt from another human. For a moment, she forgot her fear, lost in the sensation of trust and calm that his hands inspired. She pulled back quickly, embarrassed. "Thank you," she said softly, unsure why her heart was racing. "You are welcome," Ethan replied, smiling, faintly. "I would never want to cause you harm, Princess." The rest of the evening passed with similar moments. Ethan adapted quickly to Zitharan customs, often asking questions, showing curiosity and patience. Liara found herself slowly relaxing, her sharp fears softened by his kindness. Later, as the feast ended, Liara returned to the balcony where she had first stood. The twin suns were setting, casting long shadows across the crystal city. She leaned against the railing, thinking about Ethan. He was nothing like the humans she had feared. He was careful, polite, and surprisingly gentle. Viri appeared beside her, tilting her head. "Princess, you seem thoughtful." Liara smiled faintly. "Perhaps humans are not as terrible as I believed," she said. "Or at least not this one." Viri chuckled softly. "Be careful, Princess. Sometimes first impressions can change everything." Liara watched the suns dip below the horizon, her mind filled with a mix of fear, curiosity, and something new she could not name. The uneasy alliance she had dreaded might not be as frightening as she thought. And the human, perhaps he was, worth seeing again. The night deepened, and the stars of Zithara began to sparkle like scattered jewels across the sky. Liara felt a small, unusual sense of hope. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time, she wondered if she might discover something unexpected, something beyond fear and prejudice. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the tiniest spark of curiosity for the human who had changed her first impression with nothing more than a gentle touch. The next morning, the twin suns of Zithara rose slowly over the crystal towers, bathing the city in warm golden light. Princess Liara awoke feeling uneasy. She had barely slept, thinking about the human ambassador, Ethan. He had seemed polite, careful, and even kind. Yet the idea of spending days, weeks, or a lifetime near him still filled her with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Liara dressed carefully in her ceremonial attire, a flowing gown of pale blue silk that shimmered like water under the sunlight. The pattern of silver threads told the story of her ancestors, each stitch a symbol of wisdom and courage. She brushed her long dark hair and glanced at the mirror, seeing not just a princess but a young woman weighed down by duty. Downstairs, Ethan waited in the palace courtyard. He was practicing simple gestures and greetings, trying to imitate what Liara had shown him the night before. His suit, plain by Zitharan standards, felt hot under the alien sun, but he did not complain. He wanted to understand her world, to show respect, and to make a good impression. "Good morning, Princess," Ethan said as Liara approached. His voice was steady, polite, and calm. He bowed slightly, careful not to touch her without permission. "Good. Morning, Ambassador," Liara replied, curtsying lightly. She felt a flutter of nerves, but tried to keep her composure. "Today we will begin the formal ceremonies. You must learn our customs." Ethan nodded. "I am ready, Princess. I want to learn." The first challenge came immediately. They had to participate in the morning ritual of harmony, a complex ceremony in which the princess and her guest walk through the floating gardens, offering blessings to the spirits of Zithara. The platforms were suspended in mid-air, moving slowly in patterns that required careful balance. Ethan stepped cautiously. His human legs were untrained for floating platforms, and he nearly slipped when a gust of wind passed. Liara gasped and extended her hand instinctively. He caught her hand, steadying himself, and then stepped forward with care. "You must watch the platforms closely," Liara said, trying to sound strict, though her heart raced. "One wrong step and—" "I will be careful," Ethan replied, his hand still lightly brushing hers. His touch was gentle, reassuring, and somehow comforting. Liara felt her breath catch for a moment but quickly pulled her hand back, regaining her composure. As they walked, Ethan asked questions, not out of mockery but curiosity. "Why do the platforms move like this?" he asked. "Does it honor the spirits?" Liara found herself answering patiently. "Yes. They represent the balance of our world. Humans rarely understand it at first. It requires attention and respect. I will try to understand," Ethan said softly. His sincerity made Liara pause. She realized he truly wanted to learn, not just perform. It was a stark contrast to the careless humans she had imagined. Later, they entered the Hall of Reflections, where the council would observe their behavior. Mirrors of polished crystal reflected every movement, showing even the slightest mistake. Liara performed the rituals flawlessly, as expected, while Ethan struggled with some steps. He knocked over a small floating lantern, and the council murmured. Liara's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She bent quickly to help Ethan adjust the lantern, noticing again how careful he was when handling her ceremonial objects. "Do not be careless," she whispered. "These traditions are important." "I understand," Ethan said, his eyes meeting hers with respect. "I want to do this correctly, for you and for your people." Something in his words struck Liara. He did not speak as an outsider mocking her customs. He spoke as someone willing to adapt, to honor her world. She began to wonder if humans could be more than she had been taught. The day continued with lessons in dining, etiquette, and communication with Zitharan nobles. Ethan struggled at first, often fumbling the pronunciation of their language or misjudging small gestures. Liara found it frustrating, but also amusing. His earnest efforts, combined with a quiet charm, made it impossible for her to remain angry. At midday, a minor accident occurred. A tray of food slipped from a servant's hand, scattering colorful fruits across the floor. Liara instinctively moved to help, but Ethan stepped forward before she could reach the tray. He scooped up the pieces carefully, setting them back on the tray without crushing a single one. "Thank you," Liara said softly, a warmth spreading in her chest. His actions were careful, polite, and unexpected. She had expected humans to be clumsy or careless, but Ethan's touch was precise and respectful. "You are welcome," he said, bowing slightly. "I do not wish to cause trouble." By evening, the tension between them had softened. Liara found herself walking beside Ethan in the palace gardens, a gentle breeze moving the crystalline flowers. The two remained mostly silent, each lost in thought. Liara reflected on the day, on how much Ethan had tried to adapt, and on the surprising patience he showed. Ethan, meanwhile, observed her. He saw her nervous glances, her careful movements, and the way she carried herself under the weight of expectation. He understood that earning her trust would take time, but he was willing to try. At the edge of the garden, a small fountain sparkled under the twin suns. Ethan motioned toward it. "May I show you something?" he asked politely. Liara hesitated, then nodded. He led her to the fountain and gently offered his hand to steady her as she leaned closer to admire the water's colors. The touch was brief but deliberate. Liara felt a strange warmth, a calmness she had not felt before. "You seem different than I expected," she said softly. "I hope that is good," Ethan replied. I am only trying to be myself, Princess. Liara looked away, unsure how to respond. The fear she had felt earlier that morning was beginning to fade, replaced by curiosity and something she could not name. Perhaps humans were not all dirty and careless. Perhaps some could be gentle, careful, and even kind. The day ended with them returning to the palace. Liara retreated to her room, her mind racing. She had feared Ethan's presence, yet his patience, gentle touch, and sincerity had begun to change her feelings. For the first time, she wondered if the human ambassador might not be a source of fear, but something worth understanding. Outside her window, the twin suns set, casting long shadows across the floating city. Liara watched the horizon, thinking of the human who had entered her life and challenged everything she believed. The uneasy alliance was only beginning, and already her world felt a little larger, a little more uncertain, and a little more interesting. The sun was high over Zithara when an alarm rang through the crystal city. Red lights flashed along the edges of the floating towers, and the wind carried the urgent cries of palace guards. Princess Liara's heart skipped a beat. She had been preparing to teach Ethan more customs today, but now all her lessons seemed far away. "What is happening?" Ethan asked, his voice calm but alert. He had been walking beside Liara in the palace gardens, observing the delicate flowers and floating platforms. Liara shook her head. "I do not know yet. Stay close." Her violet eyes scanned the sky, noting dark shapes moving quickly between the towers. Zitharan scouts reported an attack. An unknown faction opposed to the alliance had arrived. Their ships glimmered in metallic gray, cutting through the sky like sharp knives. The palace erupted into organized chaos. Guards ran past, issuing orders in rapid, precise commands. Viri fluttered near Liara's shoulder. "Princess, we must get to safety." Ethan's gaze followed the attackers. Despite the danger, he remained composed. "Lead the way, Princess. I will stay by your side." Liara's first instinct was to protect herself and retreat, but she knew she could not abandon her people. She nodded, and together with Ethan and her attendants, she hurried toward the inner halls of the palace. As they moved, debris from minor explosions fell around them. Ethan instinctively held Liara's hand to steady her as they ran across unstable platforms. The touch, brief and careful, reassured her. She realized she no longer recoiled from him. Instead, she felt a strange calm amid the chaos. They reached a high observation tower where the council and several guards had gathered. Liara's father, King Zareth, looked troubled but determined. "We must defend our city," he said. "Ambassador Ethan, you will help us if you can." Ethan nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. Tell me what to do." The first attack came moments later. Small enemy ships hovered close to the floating gardens, firing beams that shattered the crystal paths. Zitharan shields blocked most attacks, but a few projectiles struck dangerously close. Ethan observed the ships carefully, noting patterns in their movement. "Princess," he said, pointing to a damaged section of the garden. "If we redirect the shield energy here, we can protect the civilians and stop further damage." Liara blinked, surprised. "You understand our defenses?" "Not fully," Ethan admitted, "but I can try." With King Zareth's approval, Ethan coordinated with the guards. He gave clear, simple instructions, moving quickly from one shield, control to another. His human adaptability and quick thinking allowed the Zitharans to strengthen weak points before the attackers could exploit them. Liara watched, impressed. The human ambassador, her feared, dirty human, was not only brave but capable of helping her people in ways she had never imagined. She began to see him differently, as someone more than an outsider, someone who could be trusted. A sudden blast shook the tower. Liara stumbled, nearly falling through a gap in the platform. Ethan grabbed her, pulling her to safety. His hands were firm, steady, and gentle. "Thank you," Liara whispered, heart pounding. "You're safe," Ethan replied. His voice was calm, unshaken by the danger around them. "I will not let anything happen to you." For the first time, Liara truly understood the meaning of courage. Humans might not look like Zitherans, with their polished grace and delicate forms, but they could be brave, resourceful, and protective. And Ethan's calm presence and careful actions challenged everything she had believed. The battle continued. The enemy ships were relentless, but Zitheran defenses, aided by Ethan's guidance, held strong. He worked alongside the palace guards, helping redirect energy, move civilians to safety, and anticipate enemy strategies. Liara observed him closely, noting how his decisions were thoughtful and effective. During a brief pause, Ethan approached her. "Princess, are you all right?" he asked, concern in his eyes. Liara nodded, realizing she was not afraid in the same way she had been before. "I am better than I expected. Thanks to you." "You do not need to thank me," Ethan said softly. "We are on the same side. We must protect your people." The sun began to dip toward the horizon, and the attackers started retreating. Zithera had withstood the first wave, and the city remained largely intact. Liara felt a mixture of relief and admiration. She had seen Ethan in action, calm, brave, and capable. He was nothing like the careless humans she had imagined. Later, in the quiet of the palace garden, Liara and Ethan walked together. The air smelled of crushed flowers and ozone from the energy shields. Liara spoke softly, hesitant but sincere. "I did not expect humans to be like you. You were brave and careful and kind." Ethan smiled faintly. "I am only trying to be myself, Princess. I want to help. That is all." Liara looked at him, seeing a new side of humanity reflected in his actions. Her fear, though not completely gone, had shifted into something else: respect, admiration, and a hint of trust. "You have changed my mind," she admitted. "Perhaps humans are not as terrible as I believed. Perhaps some can be extraordinary." Ethan's smile widened, slightly. "I am glad to hear that, Princess." The twin suns set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of violet and orange. The city was calm again, but Liara's heart was racing. She had faced danger, witnessed courage, and begun to see the human ambassador in a new light. For the first time. She wondered if fear was the right response at all. She glanced at Ethan, who was watching the horizon with quiet determination. The events of the day had changed her, opening her mind and heart to possibilities she had never considered. Humans, she realized, could be more than appearances. They could be gentle, brave, and capable of inspiring trust. Liara turned toward the palace, taking a deep breath. The uneasy alliance had survived its first real test, and in doing so, it had begun to form something unexpected. A bond between two very different worlds, and perhaps the beginning of understanding between two very different people. The morning after the attack, Zithera was quiet but tense. Crystal shards from the minor battle still glimmered on the floating platforms, and guards patrolled carefully. Princess Liara moved through the palace halls with a thoughtful expression. The events of the previous day lingered in her mind. The human ambassador, Ethan, had proven himself not just brave, but remarkably composed under pressure. Liara found herself walking toward the gardens where Ethan often spent time observing the floating flowers. She did not know why, but she felt drawn to his calm presence. When she entered, she found him kneeling beside a small, glowing plant, studying its petals carefully. "Good morning, Princess," Ethan said, looking up and smiling softly. "I was examining the flora. Your planet has many fascinating forms of life. Liara nodded. Yes, each plant has its purpose. We must care for them carefully or the balance of the gardens is disturbed. She paused, noticing his focused expression. You have an unusual patience for a human. Ethan chuckled lightly. I try to understand. I know humans are seen as rough and careless here, but I wish to show that we can be thoughtful too. Liara felt a small smile tug at her lips. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps humans were capable of qualities Zitherans valued greatly: care, attention, and respect. She decided to speak honestly, something she rarely did with strangers. Ethan, she began, her voice soft. Yesterday, I saw you act with courage and care. I did not expect it. I had feared humans, but you have shown me otherwise. Ethan's eyes met hers, steady and sincere. I do not want to be feared, Princess. I want to help, to be someone you can trust. Liara felt a warmth in her chest. For the first time, she considered that fear and prejudice could be replaced with understanding. She took a deep breath. I want to understand you as well, Ethan. Perhaps if I learn more about humans, I can see what you see in us. He nodded, and for a moment they walked in silence, letting the soft breeze move through the crystalline flowers. Then Ethan began to speak, sharing small stories of Earth, its oceans, mountains, and the simple joys humans cherished. He spoke of community, teamwork, and acts of kindness that seemed ordinary but were extraordinary in their effects. Liara listened, intrigued. Humans had a way of creating warmth and connection that was different from Zitherans. Their world seemed chaotic at times, yet full of hope and creativity. She found herself imagining it, wondering what it would be like to walk on Earth's soil, to see the oceans he described, and to feel the energy of a world so different from her own. In return, Liara shared the secrets of Zithera, how the gardens floated, how the crystals captured sunlight to nourish the city, and the rituals that maintained balance. Ethan listened with fascination, asking questions that showed both respect and curiosity. He never mocked, never rushed, and never made her feel small for sharing her world. At one point, Ethan helped Liara adjust her ceremonial gown as she leaned over a delicate crystal plant. His fingers brushed hers briefly, careful not to be intrusive. Liara felt a spark of warmth at the gentle touch, a sensation she could not ignore. You are different than I imagined, Liara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought humans would be careless. I thought you would not care about our customs or our world, yet here you are, patient and gentle, even in the smallest ways. Ethan smiled faintly. I care because you care. Your world is beautiful, Princess, and I do not want to harm it, or you. Liara's heart fluttered. She had never expected to feel this way about a human. The fear she had carried for so long began to fade, replaced by something new: curiosity, trust, and admiration. Perhaps humans were not just messy and loud. Perhaps they could be kind, patient, and wise. As the Ba-Tibi day progressed, they continued their lessons together. Liara showed Ethan how to communicate with Zitheran elders, teaching him the subtle gestures and expressions required for respect. Ethan learned quickly, not because he was naturally perfect, but because he genuinely wanted to understand. Later, they walked along a floating bridge connecting two palace towers. The twin suns reflected on the crystalline floor, creating a warm glow around them. Liara turned to Ethan, her expression serious. Ethan, yesterday's attack. I was scared, but you were calm. Your actions saved lives. I cannot thank you. Enough. You do not need to thank me, Ethan replied. I did what anyone should do, to protect others. That is all. Liara hesitated, then spoke softly. I want to know more about humans, about your values, your lives, perhaps understanding. Each other will make this alliance stronger. Ethan's eyes brightened. I would be honored, Princess. I wish to share and to learn, not just for politics, but because we can grow together, your world and mine. They paused on the bridge, looking out over the floating city. The breeze carried the scent of flowers and ozone from the palace shields. Liara felt a quiet peace, knowing that this human, this ambassador, was different than anything she had imagined. He was gentle, courageous, and respectful, a bridge between two very different worlds. For the first time, Liara allowed herself to hope. Hope that fear could be replaced with understanding, that prejudice could give way to trust, and that perhaps she could learn to see humans not as dirty or careless, but as capable of great honor and compassion. As the twin suns set, casting a soft purple and gold light over Zithera, Liara turned to Ethan with a small smile. I think I am beginning to understand humans, and I think I am beginning to understand you. Ethan smiled back, his calm presence steadying her in ways she had never expected. And I am beginning to understand you, Princess. Perhaps, together, we can show both our worlds what is possible. In that quiet, shared moment, amidst the floating gardens and crystalline towers, a new bond began to grow. It was not yet love, but trust and respect had taken root. And for Liara, that was more powerful than any fear she had carried before. The night settled over the city, stars twinkling like scattered jewels. Liara returned to her chambers, her mind alive with thought. She had faced fear, witnessed bravery, and begun to see beyond her old prejudices. Humans, she realized, were capable of much more than she had been taught. And perhaps, one day, she could truly trust and even admire the human ambassador at her side. The days after the attack were filled with preparation. Zithera's leaders worked tirelessly to reinforce the city and secure alliances with neighboring worlds. Princess Liara moved among them, her mind divided between her duty and the growing admiration she felt for Ethan. The human ambassador had shown his courage and intelligence during the battle, but now he was proving himself in quieter ways, helping the city recover, listening carefully to advice, and learning more of Zitheran customs. Liara watched him from the palace balcony one morning. Ethan was kneeling in the gardens, adjusting the position of delicate flowers to ensure the floating platforms remained balanced. He moved carefully, precise yet gentle, as though he understood the life of the city was fragile and beautiful. Liara felt a warmth in her chest she could not name. The fear she had once carried toward humans had faded almost completely, replaced by curiosity and respect. You seem very focused today, Liara said softly as she approached him. Ethan looked up, smiling. I am trying to help your city, Princess. Every small action matters. Liara nodded. It does, and you are learning quickly. I am surprised at how well you adapt. It is easy when I want to understand, Ethan replied simply. His calm sincerity made Liara's heart skip a beat. That afternoon, they walked together through the palace halls. Liara showed Ethan the ceremonial library, where Zitheran knowledge and history were stored in floating crystal tablets. He listened attentively as she explained traditions, customs, and the philosophy of her people. Liara was impressed by his questions, not simple curiosity, but thoughtful inquiries that showed he truly wanted to understand the world she protected. You are different from what I imagined humans would be, Liara said quietly. I expected chaos, carelessness, noise. Instead, you are considerate, patient, and capable. Ethan's gaze softened. I am human, Princess. We are not perfect, but we can learn, we can adapt, and we can care. That is all I hope to show you, Liara felt a blush rise to her cheeks. His words were simple, but they carried a weight she could not ignore. She had spent her life believing humans were distant and rough, but Ethan had shown her that humanity could be gentle, kind, and even brave beyond expectation. The evening brought another lesson. The palace hosted a gathering of allies from neighboring planets, and both Liara and Ethan had to navigate the delicate diplomacy required to maintain unity. Liara noticed how Ethan listened carefully to each guest, observing gestures, speaking politely, and adjusting his behavior to show respect. He never boasted or drew attention to himself, instead focusing on harmony and understanding. During a lull in conversation, Liara and Ethan stepped aside to a quieter balcony. The twin suns were setting, bathing the city in soft violet and gold. Liara leaned on the railing, glancing at Ethan. "You have surprised me," she admitted. "I thought I would spend this alliance in fear of humans, yet here I am, seeing someone remarkable." Ethan's gaze met hers. "And I am learning to see Zithara through your eyes, Princess. I want to understand you and your people, not as strangers, but as allies and friends." A small silence passed between them, filled with the sounds of wind and distant voices from the palace below. Liara felt a strange calm, as though his presence had the power to steady her mind and heart. For the first time, she allowed herself to enjoy the moment without thinking of duty or fear. Days turned into weeks. Liara and Ethan continued their lessons, exploring the city and practicing customs. In the quiet hours, they shared small stories. Liara about her childhood in the palace, her responsibilities, and her hopes for Zithara's future. Ethan about Earth, his family, and the simple joys of human life. Each conversation built trust and understanding between them. One afternoon, while walking along a floating bridge lined with glowing plants, Liara stumbled slightly on the polished surface. Ethan's hand shot out instinctively to steady her. Their fingers touched briefly, a gentle contact that lingered longer than expected. Liara's heart raced. "You are careful," she whispered, almost to herself. "Always gentle, even in the smallest things." "And you notice," Ethan replied softly. "I want to show respect, Princess. That is all." Liara's cheeks warmed. She realized that what she felt toward Ethan was no longer simple curiosity or admiration. It was trust, respect, and the beginnings of affection. Yet duty remained. She was a princess, and this was a political alliance. She could not allow herself to indulge in feelings too quickly, but the human ambassador seemed to sense her hesitation without words. In small gestures, offering her his arm during walks, adjusting ceremonial robes, helping her with delicate plants, he showed patience and care. Liara began to rely on him, feeling safer, calmer, and happier in his presence. The city faced smaller challenges in this period: repairs to the floating platforms, diplomatic tensions, and ensuring the citizens felt safe. Ethan helped in every way he could, his human ingenuity and adaptability earning the respect of Zitharan guards and nobles alike. Liara watched him, amazed at how someone from a faraway world could understand her people's needs so quickly. One evening, after a long day of council meetings and repairs, Liara and Ethan walked to the highest balcony of the palace. The city below glimmered in the twilight, lights reflecting off crystal towers. She turned to him, her violet eyes filled with thought. "You have changed the way I see humans, Ethan," she said softly. "I no longer fear what I once thought dangerous. Instead, I respect you, and I am beginning to admire you." Ethan smiled, his expression gentle and sincere. "And I respect and admire you, Princess. You have taught me much about Zithara, its people, and its beauty. I'm grateful for that." Liara looked out at the horizon, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. The alliance she had feared so deeply had become something new, not just a political necessity, but a connection that bridged two very different worlds. In that quiet moment, with the twin suns casting their soft light, Liara realized that trust and admiration could grow even in the most unlikely of places. Perhaps one day those feelings could become something more, but for now, she was content to walk beside the human who had changed her view of his world, learning, sharing, and building something extraordinary. Together. And somewhere deep in her heart, Liara allowed herself a quiet hope that the human, ambassador once so foreign and feared, might one day become someone she could fully trust, and perhaps even love. The days that followed were busy, but hopeful. Zithara had recovered from the attack, and life in the floating city resumed its graceful rhythm. Princess Liara moved through the palace and gardens with renewed purpose, yet her thoughts often lingered on Ethan. The human ambassador had proven his bravery, patience, and respect countless times, and each day Liara found herself trusting him more. Ethan, too, seemed to have settled into the rhythms of Zitharan life. He walked carefully on the floating platforms, learned quickly from the elders, and adapted to traditions with quiet diligence. The nobles, who had initially been skeptical, now regarded him with respect. He was no longer just a human from a distant world. He was a partner, someone who could stand alongside Zitharans in both thought and action. One morning, Liara approached him in the palace gardens. The twin suns shone brightly, reflecting off the crystal towers and illuminating the floating platforms like scattered diamonds. Ethan was kneeling beside a small water plant, adjusting the floating petals so they balanced perfectly. "Good morning, Princess," he said, looking up and smiling. "I was just making sure the plants are stable. The balance here is delicate, as you said." Liara smiled. "Yes, and you are learning quickly. I think the gardens will survive even my most careless moments, thanks to your care." Ethan chuckled, softly. "I only follow your guidance, Princess. You teach well." For a long moment they walked together in silence, letting the soft breeze flow around them. Liara realized that what she felt for Ethan had grown beyond respect and curiosity. She admired him, trusted him, and quietly her heart held a feeling she had never expected: fondness, something close to love. Their next challenge came from diplomacy. Neighboring planets had sent envoys to discuss the alliance with Earth. Zithara's council wanted to ensure the arrangement strengthened interplanetary bonds. Liara and Ethan attended the discussions together, and for the first time, they acted not just as ambassador and princess, but as partners. Ethan listened carefully, spoke clearly, and offered insights that even Zitharan leaders respected. He had a way of finding common ground, showing empathy and thinking creatively. Liara watched him with quiet admiration. The human who had once terrified her with the thought of being dirty and unpredictable was now a source of stability, wisdom, and hope. During a break, Liara found herself walking beside him on a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The twin suns had begun to set, casting soft shades of violet and gold across the towers. Liara spoke, her voice steady but soft. "Ethan, I want to thank you for everything, for your patience, your courage, your understanding, and for showing me that humans are capable of more than I ever imagined." Ethan looked at her, his calm expression warm. "You taught me too, Princess. You showed me Zithara, its people, and its beauty. I could not have learned this without you." Liara felt a gentle warmth in her chest. For the first time, she allowed herself to acknowledge her feelings fully. She trusted him completely, and the admiration in her heart had grown into something deeper. The final ceremony approached, the official signing of the alliance and the public acknowledgement of their partnership. The palace filled with guests from neighboring worlds, their ships hovering in elegant formation around the city. Liara stood beside Ethan, her hand brushing against his briefly. The gesture was small, but it carried a trust they both understood. The ceremony began. Liara spoke first, her voice strong and clear, honoring the traditions of her people while expressing hope for unity between Zithra and Earth. Ethan followed, his words respectful, thoughtful, and heartfelt. He spoke of cooperation, understanding, and the possibilities that arose when different worlds trusted one another. The audience watched silently, absorbing every word. When the ceremony ended, applause echoed across the city. The alliance was official, stronger than any leader could have imagined. After the formalities, Liara and Ethan walked to a quiet garden on the palace outskirts. The floating flowers glowed softly in the evening light, reflecting the colors of the setting suns. Liara turned to Ethan, her violet eyes shining with trust and admiration. "You have changed my life, Ethan," she said quietly. "I feared humans, but now I see that courage, kindness, and respect are what matter most. You embody them." Ethan smiled, his calm presence steadying her. "And you have shown me a world I could never have imagined, Princess. You taught me patience, understanding, and the value of trust." They stood together, the city sparkling. Beneath them, the twin suns painting the horizon in brilliant hues. For a moment, words were unnecessary. Their bond, built on courage, respect, and shared experience, was strong and unspoken. Liara took a deep breath, realizing that her fear of humans was gone. In its place was admiration, trust, and the quiet hope that their worlds could flourish together. And beside her, Ethan radiated the qualities she had once doubted humans could possess: gentleness, intelligence, bravery, and a heart that sought to understand rather than conquer. Finally, she smiled. "Ethan, I trust you, and I believe in what we can build together." He returned her smile. "And I trust you, Princess. Together, we can show our worlds the best of what we can be." The twin suns set fully, leaving a sky filled with stars that sparkled like scattered jewels across Zithra. The floating city glimmered under the night sky, alive with hope, unity, and possibility. Princess Liara and Ethan stood together, hand in hand, knowing that the future, though uncertain, was brighter because they faced it together. In that moment, the bond between two very different worlds became something more than politics. It was a symbol of understanding, trust, and the strength of humanity, gentle yet powerful, brave yet kind. And in the heart of Zithra, a princess and a human ambassador, began a journey of partnership, respect, and perhaps one day, love. The stars shimmered and the city glowed. Two worlds had come together, and a new chapter of unity, hope, and trust had begun.